Welcome to Dark Reddit, your late-night escape into eerie calm. I'm Alex, your host for tonight's journey into the shadows. Before we begin, find a quiet, comfortable place to rest. Dim the lights, take a deep breath, and gently close your eyes. Tonight's journey lasts 1 hour. 8 chilling tales told softly and slowly, designed to let your mind drift while the darkness unfolds around you. Let your body relax and allow your thoughts to wander. These are the kinds of stories you don't need to see. Only feel. You're safe here. Now, let the night begin. Let's hear a story about what happened when curiosity led to fear. It was a night like any other, but something in the air felt off. My girlfriend and I were in bed, drifting between sleep and wakefulness. The kind of night where the world outside is shrouded in fog, and the air feels thick with silence. It was around 3 a.m., the darkness of the room only interrupted by the faint light seeping through the curtains. Then, suddenly, I was jolted awake by her hands shaking me violently. I shot up in bed, heart racing, terrified, trying to understand what was happening. She was whispering something that chilled me to the bone. "He's here," she said. My mind raced, and panic surged through me. "Who?" I asked, my voice cracking with fear. "The Dark One," she whispered back, her voice strained and distant. I froze. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I had known her past, the terrible trauma she'd endured at the hands of her abuser. But this felt different. This didn't feel like her fear of the man who had tormented her. It felt something darker, something far more sinister. She wasn't fully awake. She was in this dazed trance, her eyes unfocused, almost as if she were in another world. She kept muttering, "He's over there," as she pointed to the corner of the room. But there was nothing there, just the shadowy space of the room, the stillness that surrounded us. I tried to comfort her, to get her to lay back down, telling her it was just a bad dream. But she wouldn't listen. She got out of bed, her movements sluggish but determined. "I just want a cigarette," she said, almost in a sing-song voice. I grabbed her hand tightly and led her outside. The night was eerily foggy, and the streets were nearly deserted, save for the mist that seemed to swallow up the world. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, the cold creeping into my bones as we walked in silence. For 45 minutes, we wandered aimlessly, her muttering occasionally to herself, never once acknowledging me except when she asked for a cigarette. I didn't know where I was leading her, just away from whatever nightmare she was trapped in. All I could focus on was keeping my grip on her hand, feeling like I might lose her to some unknown force if I let go. Eventually, I managed to lead her back into the house. She didn't protest, just followed me inside and laid down again. I tried to stay calm, though my heart was still pounding in my chest. I thought she might fall back asleep, but when I sat beside her, she suddenly turned her head and stared at me with wide eyes. I asked her over and over what was wrong, but she didn't answer at first. Then, she slowly turned her gaze to the left of me, her eyes widening even further. The room felt colder, as though the air itself had thickened. My pulse quickened, and I held my breath as she pointed at something behind me. "He's right behind you now," she whispered, her voice trembling with fear. "The Dark One is behind you." I felt the blood drain from my face, my body frozen in terror. The room, once silent, now seemed deafening in its stillness. I could feel every inch of my skin crawl, the hairs on the back of my neck standing straight up. The silence was so complete, it almost felt like time had stopped, like we were trapped in some sort of waiting game where something was going to happen, but I couldn't predict what. My heart raced. I could feel something in the air, something unseen yet all-consuming, pressing in from every corner of the room. I didn't dare turn around. Part of me didn't want to confirm whether she was seeing something real or if it was just a projection of her trauma. But the way she said it, the fear in her voice, made me doubt everything I thought I knew. "He wants you," she added, her voice barely above a whisper, as though speaking louder would invoke whatever it was she had seen. I didn't know what to do. I had no idea how to make sense of it all. The idea that something could be so close, lurking just behind me, was terrifying. I had to act fast. I told her to lay down, that everything was fine, that it was just a dream. She reluctantly complied, finally settling back into bed. But I couldn't shake the fear that gripped me. Couldn't sleep. I lay there, wide awake, heart racing, unable to shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The next morning, she woke up as if nothing had happened. Her usual self, with no memory of the events of the night before. She asked me, in her calm, everyday voice, "Where did my pack of cigarettes go?" Confused, I told her that she had smoked them the night before, but she had no recollection of it. She looked at me, genuinely puzzled. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her face blank. I hesitated before telling her everything that had happened. The wandering, the strange conversation, her pointing behind me, the fear in her eyes. She listened, but when I mentioned the dark one, she said something that only added to the strange nature of it all. "I remember a dream," she said slowly. "I was walking with some dark soul. It was as if the events of the night were slipping away from her like water through my fingers. The trance-like state, the fear in her voice, it all seemed to have faded into nothingness. It left me questioning everything. I never figured out whether it was just a product of her trauma or something supernatural at play. I never learned the full extent of what she had experienced. The Dark One remained an enigma. Whether it was a manifestation of her past or something more terrifying, I may never know. But that night, I learned something I'll never forget. Some things can't be explained. Some fears don't have answers. And some experiences leave their mark on you, even if you can't fully understand them. This story begins with an ordinary day that ended in whispers in the dark. When I was about 7, I got my first real bicycle. It was a huge deal for me, and I was only allowed to ride it on my street. But, of course, kids don't stay in the safe zones for long, and soon enough I found myself cruising around the corner, down a side street I wasn't supposed to go on. That's where I met her. A little girl on another bike, about the same age as me. Somehow, we started throwing rocks down the street to see who could throw the furthest, and she dared me to hit a fancy lamp on someone's walkway. "I bet you can't hit that lamp," she said, pointing to it with a mischievous grin. Of course, being a kid, I couldn't resist the challenge. I pulled my arm back and let the rock fly. It hit the lamp squarely, shattering the glass all over their sidewalk. Just as I was processing what I'd done, the front door of the house flew open, and an old lady stormed out, yelling, "Why did you do that?" I froze. Panic set in. I turned to look for the little girl, but she was already gone, pedaling down the street as fast as she could. I didn't know what to do, so I did what any scared kid would do. I ran back to my house, heart pounding, and didn't tell a soul. That night, I stayed at Grandma's house. I didn't have my own room, so I slept on the couch downstairs, which had one rule: turn off the TV before you fall asleep. If you didn't, you'd lose your privileges. Grandma was a no-nonsense woman who had lived through the Great Depression, so she was tight about everything, including electricity. But, of course, I stayed up late, as I always did, watching TV. Suddenly, the TV shut off. It wasn't a remote-control TV, just an old 19-inch RCA color TV. But I could still see that the power was on outside the house, and the clock was still ticking. It was strange, but I didn't think much of it at first. Then, something happened that I'll never forget. From the corner of my eye, I saw a figure emerging from Grandma's curio cabinet, right next to the TV. At first, it looked like a shadow, but as it got closer, I saw the unmistakable shape of a woman. She was walking towards me, and I was frozen with fear. I ducked under my blanket, trying to hide, but then I heard a voice. It was so loud, like it was right in my ear. "Why did you do that? Why did you break that lamp?" The voice boomed. I was shaking uncontrollably, sweat pouring down my face, my heart racing. The voice came again, louder this time. "Why did you do that?" And then, the worst part, something grabbed my arm. It was a cold, tight grip, and I could feel the fingers digging into my right bicep as if they were trying to pull me from the blanket. It squeezed so hard that I could feel it for hours afterward. The voice repeated, "Why did you do that?" In an instant, the TV flickered back to life and the figure was gone. I stayed under the blanket for the rest of the night, too terrified to move. I didn't dare turn off the TV, thinking that if I did, whatever that thing was might come back. The next morning, Grandma came downstairs and, as usual, shut off the TV. "I thought I told you not to leave the TV on," she scolded. I jumped up, terrified, and hugged her. I quickly told her what had happened, expecting her to believe me, but instead, she looked at me, wide-eyed, and said, "Oh, come on now. Don't lie to me." She then pointed to my arm and said, "You must have fallen off the couch. Don't leave the TV on again." But I knew what had happened. That bruise on my arm wasn't from falling off the couch. It was from something else, something that I couldn't explain. I went to my mom, desperate to tell her what had really happened. I pulled her aside and whispered everything to her. She nodded thoughtfully and then said, "The reason Grandma got upset is because you saw her mom, your great-grandmother. She passed away a long time ago but never left this house. We've all seen her at times. She's always watching over you because she loves you." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no idea that my great-grandmother's spirit had been around all this time. But now I was certain of it. Ghosts can connect with you. And, as crazy as it sounds, they can physically harm you. It wasn't a dream. That bruise on my arm was proof of that. And even though Grandma tried to brush it off, deep down, I knew the truth. The ghost wasn't just there to scare me. She had something to say. She was there because I had done something wrong. That day, I learned two things. One, never break a fancy lamp on a dare. And two, sometimes the spirits of those we love never really leave us. As you breathe deeper and sink into sleep, this next Reddit tale may just make your skin crawl. Today, my friend and I decided to take our kids downtown. It had been a while since we spent the day out and about, and we were looking forward to seeing some of the city's sights. After a fun walk around, we stopped at a local restaurant to grab lunch. The place wasn't anything special, just a small, non-chain restaurant with an inviting atmosphere, but it was perfect for a relaxing break in the middle of our day. We were sitting there, enjoying our meal, when my 10-year-old daughter, who was quietly eating, suddenly looked up at me with a strange expression. It wasn't fear or anxiety, just a kind of bewilderment, as if something heavy was on her mind. She leaned in close to me and whispered, "Mom, I can see the future." At first, I thought she was just being dramatic, but then she continued. She explained that, in her mind, she had already seen the exact scene we were experiencing. She described how she had seen herself, her brother, and her friend all sitting at the same table in the same restaurant, with everything exactly as it was in that moment. The patterns on the walls, the arrangement of the tables, even the hum of conversations in the background. Everything. And here's the kicker. She had never been to that restaurant before. It wasn't a place we'd visited, nor was it a chain we could have seen advertised anywhere. Yet she was certain she'd seen it all before. I was trying to wrap my head around what she was saying, but she wasn't done. After a pause, she continued with another story, one that sent a chill down my spine. She said that, before we even moved into our current house, she had seen herself in our neighborhood. This wasn't just a vague memory or a déjà vu moment. She described playing with the neighbors, kids she had never met, playing foursquare in the exact spot she had envisioned. She even told me about the street, the houses, and how everything felt so familiar. I tried to explain déjà vu to her. Perhaps it was just a weird sense of familiarity, but she was insistent. No, it wasn't déjà vu. It wasn't a dream either. She had seen the whole thing clearly in a picture in her head. I can't help but wonder, what does this mean? The more she talked, the stranger it felt. Could it be that her imagination was running wild? After all, she has a pretty creative mind, and kids often come up with wild ideas. But this wasn't like her usual imagination. She seemed so certain, so convinced that what she had seen was real. It wasn't something she was making up on the spot. It was something she had known for a while. Something that happened in her mind before it happened in real life. She mentioned that these two incidents were the only time she had ever felt this way, and today was the first time she ever told me about it. I asked her if she thought maybe she'd had these visions in a dream or a daydream, but she was clear that it wasn't that. She didn't know how to explain it. She didn't know if she was just imagining it or if something more was at play. I'm left wondering whether there's something more to this than just a child's creativity or imagination. I have to admit, the more I think about it, the more unsettling it becomes. It's hard to shake the feeling that something bigger might be happening here. I can't help but wonder if this is a form of intuition, or maybe something even stranger. Has anyone else had their child say something like this? Or is it just my daughter's big imagination? I can't help but think that there's more to it, something I'm not seeing. What's even stranger is the fact that my daughter doesn't seem scared by it at all. She's matter of fact, like it's completely normal to see the future in your mind. And if that's the case, where does it stop? Is this just a fluke? Or could there be more to it than meets the eye? Could she truly be seeing events before they happen? I don't know, but for now, I can't stop thinking about it. As you breathe deeper and sink into sleep, this next Reddit tale may just make your skin crawl. Today, my friend and I decided to take our kids downtown. It had been a while since we spent the day out and about, and we were looking forward to seeing some of the city's sights. After a fun walk around, we stopped at a local restaurant to grab lunch. The place wasn't anything special, just a small, non-chain restaurant with an inviting atmosphere. But it was perfect for a relaxing break in the middle of our day. We were sitting there, enjoying our meal, when my 10-year-old daughter, who was quietly eating, suddenly looked up at me with a strange expression. It wasn't fear or anxiety, just a kind of bewilderment, as if something heavy was on her mind. She leaned in close to me and whispered, "Mom, I can see the future." At first, I thought she was just being dramatic, but then she continued. She explained that, in her mind, she had already seen the exact scene we were experiencing. She described how she had seen herself, her brother, and her friend all sitting at the same table in the same restaurant, with everything exactly as it was in that moment. The patterns on the walls, the arrangement of the tables, even the hum of conversations in the background. Everything. And here's the kicker. She had never been to that restaurant before. It wasn't a place we'd visited, nor was it a chain we could have seen advertised anywhere. Yet she was certain she'd seen it all before. I was trying to wrap my head around what she was saying, but she wasn't done. After a pause, she continued with another story, one that sent a chill down my spine. She said that, before we even moved into our current house, she had seen herself in our neighborhood. This wasn't just a vague memory or a déjà vu moment. She described playing with the neighbors, kids she had never met, playing foursquare in the exact spot she had envisioned. She even told me about the street, the houses, and how everything felt so familiar. I tried to explain déjà vu to her. Perhaps it was just a weird sense of familiarity, but she was insistent. No, it wasn't déjà vu. It wasn't a dream either. She had seen the whole thing clearly in a picture in her head. I can't help but wonder, what does this mean? The more she talked, the stranger it felt. Could it be that her imagination was running wild? After all, she has a pretty creative mind, and kids often come up with wild ideas. But this wasn't like her usual imagination. She seemed so certain, so convinced that what she had seen was real. It wasn't something she was making up on the spot. It was something she had known for a while. Something that happened in her mind before it happened in real life. She mentioned that these two incidents were the only time she had ever felt this way, and today was the first time she ever told me about it. I asked her if she thought maybe she'd had these visions in a dream or a daydream, but she was clear that it wasn't that. She didn't know how to explain it. She didn't know if she was just imagining it or if something more was at play. I'm left wondering whether there's something more to this than just a child's creativity or imagination. I have to admit, the more I think about it, the more unsettling it becomes. It's hard to shake the feeling that something bigger might be happening here. I can't help but wonder if this is a form of intuition, or maybe something even stranger. Has anyone else had their child say something like this? Or is it just my daughter's big imagination? I can't help but think that there's more to it, something I'm not seeing. What's even stranger is the fact that my daughter doesn't seem scared by it at all. She's matter of fact, like it's completely normal to see the future in your mind. And if that's the case, where does it stop? Is this just a fluke? Or could there be more to it than meets the eye? Could she truly be seeing events before they happen? I don't know, but for now I can't stop thinking about it. This one is about a quiet night that turned into something unforgettable. This story has haunted me for years, and I still don't know if it was just my imagination or something more. Let me take you back to when I was around 6 or 7 years old. I had gone to visit my grandparents for the weekend, something I always looked forward to. I was excited to spend time with them, but little did I know, this visit would turn into an experience that still puzzles me to this day. I remember it clearly. My grandfather had gone to the store, and hours passed without him returning. My grandmother began to worry, and as we waited, I noticed something odd. There, sitting in the corner of the room on the couch, was an elderly man. He looked like a typical grandfather, with gray hair and a gray beard, hunched over in a way that made him look fragile. What was even stranger was that he spoke to me in a voice that was hoarse, almost as if he had trouble speaking. He told me that my grandfather was stuck in the elevator. It wasn't a question or an observation. It was a statement, clear and certain. I felt no fear. In fact, I felt a strange curiosity. Who was this man? Why was he telling me this? And what did he mean by stuck in the elevator? I looked over to my grandmother, who was in the other room, and said, "Grandpa's stuck in the elevator." She turned to me, confused, and asked, "Who told you that?" I pointed to the man in the corner and said, "The grandpa in the corner told me." She looked at me like I was joking, but when she saw the look on my face, she quickly went to check on the elevator. To my surprise, my grandfather really was stuck in the elevator. He had been trapped there for quite some time. My grandmother quickly called for help, but the whole thing was a blur. I still don't know if what I saw was a hallucination, a child's fantasy, or something more. The man in the corner was gone as soon as my grandmother left the room to check on my grandfather. He had simply vanished, and I couldn't explain it. Was it a ghost? A brownie? Some sort of spirit? I'll never know. One thing that stands out to me, though, is how calm I felt. I wasn't afraid of the man. I didn't feel threatened. In fact, I was more curious than anything. He wasn't menacing in any way. It was as if he was just there, and I was supposed to talk to him. I've always wondered about this experience. I don't know what I saw, but it was so vivid and real to me at the time. It happened in Russia, and the creature I saw had the appearance of an old man. Gray hair, gray beard, and a hunched back. His voice was strange, hoarse, but there was something almost comforting about him. It's been years since that day, and I still can't make sense of it. Could it have been my imagination running wild as a child? Or could it have been something else entirely? Something beyond explanation? I'll never know for sure, but that strange encounter has stayed with me all these years, and I can't help but wonder, who was that man, and what was he trying to tell me? As you breathe deeper and sink into sleep, this next Reddit tale may just make your skin crawl. In 2021, I had an experience that has stayed with me, and I still can't fully explain it. It was around 8 p.m., and I was lying sideways on my bed, eyes closed, not asleep yet but drifting into that half-dreamy state we all know too well. The usual sounds of my parents arguing in the other room filled the air, nothing out of the ordinary. But that's when it happened. Out of nowhere, I felt it. A woman's finger gently pressed against my shoulder. Couldn't have imagined it. I could feel the pressure of her touch, cool, delicate, like someone was right there with me. And then, just as clearly, I felt a faint breath on my skin, soft and unsettling. It wasn't a trick of my mind. It was real. I froze. And then came the feeling of heaviness, a suffocating pressure that settled on me, almost like I was being held down by an invisible force. I realized, suddenly, that I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. It was as though my body was locked in place, almost paralyzed. But I wasn't asleep. I wasn't fully unconscious. I was aware. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't terror, but it wasn't a pleasant feeling either. There was a presence in the room with me, and it was watching me. That was the only way I could describe it. Like something unseen was waiting. I didn't understand what was happening, but I felt observed. Then, and this is the part that still haunts me, my mom came into the room. She woke me up gently, as though she knew something was off. The strange thing? I hadn't made a sound. I hadn't called for help. But somehow she just knew. She told me she felt something was wrong and wanted to check on me. How did she know? Why did she come in at that exact moment? To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. I've heard of sleep paralysis, of course, but this didn't feel like that. Yes, I couldn't move, but I didn't feel like I was in a dream either. It was different. The sensation of being touched, the faint breath on my skin, and the way my mom knew to check on me. Everything about it felt intentional. I don't know if it was a spirit, a lingering energy, or just something in my mind. But whatever it was, the timing was too precise. The physical sensations were too vivid. I've never been able to shake the feeling that it was something more. Has anyone else ever experienced something like this? Was it just sleep paralysis? Or could it have been something else entirely? Now, let's hear what happened when curiosity led to fear. It all started after my friend passed away, and I had to attend the funeral. It was a heartbreaking day, but one that we all go through, paying our respects and grieving. The funeral was tough, but after it was over, I tried to go back to some semblance of normalcy. My mom, however, who's a bit on the superstitious side, gave me one of her usual requests. She called to tell me to take a bath before going to bed that night, as she always does whenever there's been a death. Her reasoning is that it's to wash away any bad energy or lingering spirits that may have attached themselves to you. At first, I always thought it was just one of her quirky traditions, a way of dealing with grief and the unknown. But that night, after the funeral, things started happening that made me question it all. The following evening, I was in my room, just relaxing on the bed, thinking about everything that had just transpired. The room was quiet, and the atmosphere was heavy, with that lingering sadness that tends to sit in the air after a funeral. My mom called again around 6 or 7 p.m. to check on me. She was upset, though, more than usual, ranting about how I shouldn't have gone to the funeral at all. I couldn't understand why she was so adamant about it, but she was firm in her words, saying there was something wrong about the whole situation. I let her talk, though, because, well, that's what she did. As she was speaking, something incredibly strange happened. My door, which I was sure had been left open, slammed shut all of a sudden. The sound was loud, and I immediately jumped. I thought at first it was the wind, some draft pushing it closed, but when I glanced over, I realized my windows were tightly shut. The air was still, not a single gust of wind, so there was no logical explanation for what had just happened. I mentioned the door slamming to my mom, but as I did, the phone line began cutting out. It was as if the connection was being disrupted. The sound of her voice became muffled, and there was a weird static that filled the space between us. I could still hear her faintly, but she couldn't hear me properly, no matter how many times I tried to speak. It was as if something was interfering with the call. I remember sitting there, staring at my phone, trying to get the call to clear up, but it was futile. I could hear her on the other end, but it felt like the distance between us had somehow expanded. There was this eerie, almost suffocating silence between the static. My mom was telling me that she could barely hear me, and I kept asking her if she was okay, wondering why the call kept cutting out. I couldn't explain it, and I could tell she was unnerved too, but she didn't want to panic me. Once the call finally dropped entirely, I sat there for a few moments, frozen. That feeling of something being off didn't go away. The door slamming, the static-filled phone call, the oddness of it all. It felt wrong. I got up and walked around the room, trying to shake the unease, but the feeling lingered. The next night, things started getting even stranger. I was just sitting in my room again, doing my usual thing, when I noticed the light flicker on its own. It wasn't a usual flicker like a light bulb going bad. It was as if the light had just decided to turn on for no reason. I figured maybe it was just a random glitch with the electrical wiring, but then it happened again a few minutes later. It was like the light had a mind of its own, and that sense of something not quite right, that eerie vibe, just grew stronger. Then, a couple of days after that, another odd occurrence. My phone's volume randomly turned itself down, and I was left sitting there, wondering how the volume had lowered. I had been using it earlier and hadn't touched the volume buttons, but somehow, it had just adjusted itself. At first, I told myself it was just a technical glitch, but deep down, I knew it didn't feel like a coincidence anymore. All these little things were starting to add up, and it was becoming harder to brush them off as mere technical issues. I kept all of this to myself for a while, but it was really starting to bug me. Was I imagining it all? Was there something going on with the electronics? But then I realized that everything seemed to be happening right after the funeral, and it felt like more than just strange coincidences. There was this feeling of energy in the air that I couldn't shake. One night, as I was lying in bed, trying to rationalize what was going on, I found myself getting more and more unsettled. The events of the last few days replayed in my mind, and I thought back to how my mom had insisted I shouldn't have gone to the funeral. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was something to her superstitions, something I hadn't taken seriously enough before. After all, the door slamming shut on its own, the weird phone call, the electrical oddities, none of it seemed easily explained. I called my mom again to tell her what had been happening, and she listened, sounding worried. She asked me if I felt like something was with me, and it hit me that I hadn't really felt alone at all during all of this. There was this presence, a sense of being watched, like something unseen was lingering just out of view. I felt it, but I couldn't name it. It wasn't a feeling of fear exactly, but more like a warning, like something was trying to make itself known. I'm not sure what to make of it all, to be honest. On the one hand, I could convince myself it was all just a series of strange coincidences, technical problems, and my mind playing tricks on me. But on the other hand, the timing right after the funeral, and the events that seemed to coincide with it, make me wonder if there's something more to it. So I'm reaching out here, hoping someone can offer a bit of insight. Has anyone else experienced strange occurrences like this after a funeral or a major loss? Could it be something as simple as stress manifesting in odd ways, or could there be something more supernatural at play? I'm still trying to figure it out, but it's hard to ignore the strange coincidences and the unsettling feeling that's been following me around since that night. This story is about a haunting experience that followed her long after she left the church. I don't even know where to start, but I feel like I have to share this. I'm a 15-year-old girl, and I've been carrying this weight on my chest for years now, ever since it happened when I was 12. I'm not sure if this is the right place to post this, but the fear and paranoia I felt ever since still haunts me, and I just need to get it off my chest. So, I was a part of an organization at church back when I was 12. It was Holy Week, and we were supposed to do the Station of the Cross at midnight, but because of rain, they moved it to 3 a.m. I arrived a little early, around 1:57 a.m., and as I entered the church grounds, I was greeted by the parish priest who was heading upstairs to the convent. He didn't seem out of the ordinary, just going about his priestly duties. I made my way to the parish hall where my fellow co-church servants and I were gathering. After a few minutes, one of my close friends, Ashley, showed up. We chatted for a bit, passing time until it was about 2:30 a.m. Ashley was hungry, so I suggested we head to the nearby 7-Eleven since it was open 24 hours. We grabbed our things and headed outside the parish hall. The church grounds were quiet and dark, with only a few lights on inside the church. As we were walking down the corridor, I noticed something strange. On our right were large doors leading into the church, and the glass panels on them had pictures of the Stations of the Cross. I happened to glance toward them, and to my shock, I saw a priest inside the church. The problem? The main church doors were still closed, and there was no way he could have entered. But what really made my blood run cold was the sight of him. The priest was wearing red, but what made it utterly terrifying was that he had no head. He was kneeling, his body facing the altar, with a blue rosary clutched in his hands. I froze in place, unsure if I was just seeing things. But when I turned to Ashley, her face mirrored my shock. She saw it too. There was no mistake. We both stared, wide-eyed, and then, in pure panic, we ran out of the church grounds towards 7-Eleven, hoping to leave whatever we'd just witnessed behind. By the time we reached 7-Eleven, we saw our church officers on their way to the church. We told them what we saw, and they were just as freaked out as we were. We quickly bought our snacks and made our way back to the church, where the midnight mass was now about to begin. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong, but that wasn't the end of it. The next day was Black Saturday, and we were attending mass again, sitting in the first row of pews. Our church had a Facebook page where they often posted pictures taken during Massachusetts. As usual, my co-church servants and I checked the page to see if we were in any photos, laughing and looking through them for fun. That's when we saw something that made my heart drop. In one of the photos, there was a woman sitting between two of my friends, but she was wearing a black lace dress with a black veil, her curly hair cascading over her shoulders. The thing that immediately caught my attention was how out of place she looked. We were all wearing white dresses and white veils for the occasion, but this woman in black stood out like a sore thumb. What made it worse was that the woman was sitting in the exact spot where I had been standing. At first, I thought it was just a random woman who had wandered into the photo, but after staring at the image for a few more moments, I realized something was terribly wrong. None of us had seen her during the mass, and she had definitely not been sitting with us. It was as though she appeared out of nowhere in the photo. I saved the image and immediately showed it to my parents when I got home. They were just as freaked out as I was. My mom and dad called the priest and asked him to come bless our house, which he did. We all felt unsettled, unsure of what we were dealing with. The next day, we learned something even more disturbing. This wasn't the first time the woman in black had appeared in those photos. Apparently, she had appeared in the exact same spot in every Black Saturday Mass photo that had been taken in that church for 2 years prior. My experience marked the third time she had appeared in the photos, always sitting between the co-church servants, always wearing the same black lace dress and veil. At that point, I was done. I never went back to that church again. The thought of seeing that woman again, or even experiencing something like that, was enough to keep me away for good. I've never shared this with anyone other than my parents and a few close friends. I still don't understand what happened. Was it a ghost? A spirit? A strange coincidence? I have no idea. But I know that what I saw was real, and I haven't been able to shake the anxiety and paranoia that came with it. Something about that church, about the woman in black, has stayed with me, and I haven't been able to find peace with it since. If anyone has experienced anything similar, or has any thoughts on what could have been going on, I'd love to hear them. I'm still so unsettled by it all. This story comes from someone who thought they were just signing up for quick cash, but ended up unlocking something that should have stayed hidden. I took a job from an app no one's heard of. Now I can't leave my house. I was 2 weeks deep into unemployment, broke, stressed, eating peanut butter straight from the jar, when the email arrived. No subject, no sender. Just a single message and a link. Real work, real pay, real fast. I should have deleted it. Hell, any sane person would. But desperation doesn't care about sanity. So I clicked. It took me to a page for an app called Grindstone. Sleek, black interface, minimalist white text, and a single glowing button. Start working. Out of options and nearly out of food, I tapped it. The first job was easy, almost absurd. Task: leave a 5-star Yelp review for Rick's Roof and Gutter Repair. Pay $10. They gave me the review to copy. I pasted it in, clicked submit, and within seconds, $10 landed in my linked account. Real money. That was the hook. Over the next 3 days, I completed dozens of small, weird tasks. Flagging strange videos, sharing obscure links, sending a pizza to an address across town with a handwritten note that said, "You made the list." Weird? Yeah. Illegal? Maybe. But I was up $1,200 in 3 days, and no one came knocking. Then the tone shifted. Task: leave a dead rat on the front steps of 1849, redacted Ave. Pay $500. I stared at the screen, unsure if it was a joke. A minute later, there was a knock at my door. No one was there, just a sealed cooler. Inside was a dead rat. My rent was overdue. My stomach was gnawing at itself. I walked 10 blocks, dropped the cooler, and left. The money hit before I made it back home. I told myself it was a prank, that I was just a pawn in some weird internet game. Then came the next job. Task: follow the man in the gray hoodie leaving the 24-hour laundromat on 6th. Take 3 photos. Do not be seen. Pay $1,200. I waited in my car for hours. Eventually, he appeared. Gray hoodie, soaked in sweat, glancing over his shoulder like he knew. I followed him 3 blocks, took the photos, uploaded them, watched him disappear into an apartment building. The money hit, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Then came the task that made me physically sick. Task: wait in the alley behind La Casa Cafe. When a woman in a white apron throws out a garbage bag, retrieve it. Do not open it. Do not speak to her. Hide it in the woods. Pay $4,000. I parked near the alley and waited. At 1:03 a.m., a woman stepped out of the back door, looked both ways, and tossed a heavy bag into the bin. Thudded solid, too solid for trash. I didn't ask questions. I drove it 12 miles into the forest. The bag shifted. Something inside moved. The app dinged. A thank you message. A smiling emoji. I tried to uninstall it. Wouldn't go. Factory reset. It reinstalled mid-process. Next task. Task: take a selfie in the mirror. Keep your back turned to the dark. Pay $250. I sat in the bathroom, facing the mirror. The lights flickered. Behind me, the shower curtain stirred like someone breathing behind it. I took the photo. My reflection was smiling. I wasn't. Then the app updated. Task: look closely. I opened the photo. In the reflection, just behind me, stood a woman with no eyes. Her mouth stretched open in a scream that made no sound. Skin like old wax. Hair dripping wet. I turned around so fast I knocked over the sink. Nothing there. I smashed the mirror. I shut off the phone. Powered itself back on. Task: you've seen her now. You're marked. Introduce her to someone else. Pay their silence. The app now had a share button. I didn't sleep for 2 days. Kept every light on. Covered every reflective surface. Then came another task. Task: she's getting closer. Choose someone. Fast. Timer: 6 hours. Panicked. Called my brother. Told him about the app. Said it was a game. He laughed. I sent him the link. He downloaded it. Took his first task. Record yourself sleeping. The next morning, I got a text. Why is there a woman crawling across my ceiling? Then, she's inside the walls. Then nothing. The app dinged. He was successful. She's found a new home. I smashed my phone with a hammer. Threw it in the river. Moved to a new city. New number. New life. Peace. For a while. Until a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a phone. Already on. Already logged into Grindstone. The screen lit up. Task: your brother failed. She came back. You owe us. Task: bring someone in. Now. Timer: 14 minutes and 59 seconds. I locked the doors. Covered every mirror. Hid in the closet. The timer's almost out. If you get a link today, no sender, no subject. Please, I'm begging you, don't click. You've made it through the hour. The stories are over now, and the night is quiet again. Let the silence soothe you. Whatever followed you from the tales, leave it here. You're safe. You're calm. And you're already drifting deeper into rest. If you enjoyed these stories, consider subscribing to Dark Reddit for more nightly chills. Until next time, sleep well.